The nurse caught Claire Whitmore just before she reached room 417. Without saying hello, she took Claire's hand, slipped something cold and flat into her palm, and folded her fingers around it. It was a USB flash drive. "Watch this at home," the nurse whispered, her eyes darting nervously down the hallway. "And don't come back to him until you've seen everything." Before Claire could ask a single question, the woman disappeared around the corner, her white shoes barely making a sound against the polished hospital floor. Claire stood frozen. 7:42 a.m. Fourth floor of Hudson Memorial Medical Center in Albany, New York. The tiny plastic drive suddenly felt heavier than anything she'd ever held. For 11 days her husband, Ethan Whitmore, had been recovering after a devastating highway crash on Interstate 87. According to doctors, his SUV had slammed into the rear of a commercial delivery truck during heavy rain. The MRI showed a fractured vertebra, but no damage to his spinal cord. The neurologists couldn't fully explain why he claimed he couldn't properly move his legs, or why his right arm barely lifted above his shoulder. Pain was subjective. Paralysis was difficult to confirm immediately. Everyone said recovery would take months. Claire believed every word. She had spent nearly every night sleeping beside his hospital bed on a narrow folding cot that left her back aching each morning. She was 35 years old. Senior financial controller for a logistics company. Numbers had always been her language. Debits either matched credits, or someone was lying. She and Ethan had been married for 8 years. Their 8-year-old son, Ryan, stayed with Claire's closest friend while she practically lived inside the hospital. Every morning followed the exact same routine. Ethan would wake around 7. He'd groan before opening his eyes. He would ask for water. Then medication. Then he'd stare silently at the ceiling while machines beeped softly beside him. Claire adjusted his blankets. Helped him eat. Answered questions from nurses. Signed insurance paperwork. She never complained. Not once. People admired her devotion. Especially Ethan's older sister. Natalie Brooks arrived every day at exactly 8:20 a.m. Never earlier. Never later. Always carrying fresh fruit, bottled water, or clean clothes. "You have to take care of yourself too," Natalie constantly reminded Claire, while fluffing Ethan's pillow with practiced precision. "If you collapse, who'll take care of Ryan? Ethan probably won't be working again." Claire always nodded politely. She appreciated the concern. At least, she thought she did. Ethan's mother, Evelyn Whitmore, visited less frequently. But when she came, she stayed for hours. Curiously, she almost never spoke directly to Claire. Instead, she spoke about her. "She's exhausted. Poor thing. I hope she doesn't break under all this pressure." As if Claire wasn't sitting 3 feet away. As if she were another piece of hospital furniture. Then there was the head nurse. Linda Carter. Efficient. Professional. Quiet. She rarely engaged in conversation beyond medical necessities. Yet Claire noticed something odd. Every single time Linda entered Ethan's room, she paused near his bedside just a little longer than necessary. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But long enough for Claire to wonder why. Even stranger. Linda's eyes often drifted toward Ethan's phone resting face down on the bedside cabinet. Almost as if she expected it to light up. One night, around 2:15 a.m., the phone vibrated. Just once. Claire hadn't been sleeping. She had spent hours counting tiny cracks in the ceiling tiles while rain tapped softly against the hospital windows. The screen flashed briefly. Then went dark. She considered looking. She didn't. She told herself everyone deserved privacy. Even spouses. The next morning she walked downstairs to buy coffee from the vending machine near the emergency entrance. Hospital coffee never tasted good. But holding something warm helped. That night, for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, Claire slept at home. Ryan wrapped one arm around her before falling asleep within minutes. She lay awake much longer. The silence inside her own bedroom felt unfamiliar after 11 nights surrounded by ventilators, monitors, and distant ambulance sirens. The following morning, she returned before sunrise. Ethan was already awake. "Can you hand me my phone?" he asked quietly. "My shoulder's killing me." Claire picked it up from the cabinet. As she turned the screen toward him, a notification appeared. Order delivered. 11:38 p.m. She stared. Only for a second. Then calmly handed him the phone without saying a word. He unlocked it immediately. Deleted something. Locked it again. Neither of them spoke. Claire quietly left the room. She didn't buy coffee that morning. Instead, she stood beside a hallway window overlooking the hospital parking lot. For nearly 10 minutes. Watching cars arrive. Watching strangers begin ordinary mornings. Trying to convince herself she wasn't imagining things. That evening, the room was full. Natalie. Evelyn. The attending physician. Claire stepped inside carrying Ethan's clean laundry. She didn't sit. She looked directly at her husband. "What happened at 11:38 last night?" The room went silent. Ethan blinked. "What do you mean?" "The food delivery. You ordered dinner." Natalie immediately stood. "Claire, seriously? He's recovering from spinal trauma. Is this really the time?" Claire never looked away from Ethan. "I'm asking my husband a simple question." His eyes shifted toward the window. "It must have been an app glitch." "I don't know." No hesitation. No confusion. Just an answer. Too smooth. Too practiced. Claire nodded once. Picked up her purse. Walked out without another word. Behind her, she heard Natalie calling her name. She kept walking. That night, lying on the folding cot beside Ethan's bed, Claire opened the Notes app on her phone. She created a new document. Its title contained only one word. Ethan. Then she wrote her first entry. July 18 to 11:38 p.m. Food delivery notification, while patient claimed he couldn't reach his own phone. She stared at the sentence for several seconds. Then added another. Observed severe pain at 9:15 a.m. while doctor present. Pain disappeared within 1 minute after physician left room. She locked her phone. Slid it beneath her pillow. And for reasons she couldn't yet explain. She had the unsettling feeling that this was only the beginning. Claire never intended to become an investigator. She simply couldn't stop noticing patterns. It was second nature. Years of balancing corporate budgets had taught her one painful lesson. Small inconsistencies eventually expose much larger lies. The notebook on her phone slowly filled with observations. Every morning, Natalie arrived exactly 10 minutes before the doctor's rounds. Every afternoon, she left almost exactly 10 minutes after they ended. Not once did her schedule change. Not because she loved routine. Because she seemed to know precisely when Ethan needed an audience. Claire also noticed something else. Whenever they were alone, Ethan hardly complained. He lay quietly. Sometimes he even looked relaxed. But the moment footsteps approached outside the room, his breathing changed. His face tightened. He grimaced before anyone even opened the door. By the time a nurse or physician walked in, he looked like a man enduring unbearable agony. The performance was flawless. If Claire hadn't been watching every minute, she would never have questioned it. She added another note. Pain behavior appears only when someone is observing. 3 days later, Ryan visited after school. He carried a handmade, get well soon card decorated with crooked superheroes and bright blue stars. Ethan smiled warmly. "My little buddy." Ryan hugged him carefully before climbing into the chair beside Claire. They spent half an hour talking about school, baseball, and the family's golden retriever. Everything felt almost normal. Claire stepped into the hallway to use the restroom. When she returned a few minutes later, Ryan was unusually quiet. He didn't look at Ethan. He simply held Claire's hand all the way to the parking garage. That evening, while eating macaroni and cheese at home, Ryan suddenly asked, "Mom?" Claire looked up. "Yeah? Is Dad getting better?" "I hope so." Ryan stirred his food without taking another bite. "I think he already is." Claire smiled faintly. "What makes you say that?" The boy shrugged. "I saw him." Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Saw him doing what?" "Walking." Silence. "When?" "The last time we visited." Claire frowned. "Ryan. Dad can't walk." "I know what the doctors said." Ryan spoke with the calm certainty only children possess. "But I saw him." Claire waited. "He got out of bed after you left. He walked into the hallway. He thought nobody was looking." Claire felt an uncomfortable chill crawl across her shoulders. For a split second, she imagined exactly what Ryan described. Then logic took over. Children imagine things. Ryan had always been creative. He once insisted their neighbor's cat secretly worked for the police. Another time, he claimed he'd seen Santa Claus driving a pickup truck in July. Claire forced herself to smile. "You probably dreamed it." Ryan lowered his eyes. "I wasn't asleep." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm sure it looked that way." He didn't argue. He simply nodded. Finished dinner. And quietly disappeared into his room. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. Not because she believed Ryan. Because she realized how quickly she'd dismissed him. She opened the Notes app again. Added another line. "Ryan claims he saw Ethan walking after I left room." Then she stared at it for nearly 5 minutes before locking her phone again. The following afternoon, Dr. Michael Hayes entered Ethan's room carrying a tablet. He was young. Probably no older than 40. Professional. Always respectful. After completing the neurological exam, he stepped into the hallway. Claire followed. "Doctor." He stopped. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." She hesitated. "Has anyone ever pretended to be paralyzed?" His expression changed. "Not dramatically. Just enough." "It happens." "Rarely." "But yes." Claire swallowed. "How do you know?" "There are specialized neurological tests. Repeated examinations. Unexpected evaluations." He studied her face carefully. "Why are you asking?" Claire almost answered. Almost. Instead she smiled weakly. "I was just wondering." He didn't look convinced. "If something feels wrong," he said quietly, "don't ignore it." Those words stayed with her all day. 2 mornings later, Claire noticed something she'd somehow overlooked. Every time Ethan needed help reaching something, his injured right arm barely moved. Yet occasionally, when he believed nobody was watching, his fingers worked perfectly. Adjusting his blanket, scratching his neck, even unlocking his phone. Tiny movements. Easy to miss. Impossible to forget once noticed. She began timing everything. Pain episodes. Doctor visits. Medication. Family arrivals. Within 4 days, the pattern became undeniable. Every dramatic expression of pain occurred while someone else was present. Not once. Not a single time did Ethan cry out when they were completely alone. Claire compared the timestamps. The overlap was nearly perfect. She closed the Notes app. Rested her head against the cold hospital wall. For the first time, she wasn't wondering whether something was wrong. She was wondering how long it had been happening. And why. Then she remembered the USB drive still sitting untouched inside the side pocket of her purse. She had carried it for nearly a week. Every day she thought about watching it. Every day something interrupted her. Or perhaps she subconsciously feared discovering what it contained. Because deep inside, she already suspected the answer. And she wasn't sure she was ready to see it. Claire tried 3 different times to watch the USB drive. Each attempt ended the same way. Interrupted. Or abandoned. Once, a nurse walked into Ethan's room just as Claire opened her laptop. Another time, Ethan woke up unexpectedly and asked for help adjusting his blanket. The third time, she simply stared at the flash drive in her hand for nearly 5 minutes before slipping it back into her purse. Whatever was on it would change everything. She could feel it. And once she knew the truth, there would be no going back. Meanwhile, life inside room 417 continued as though nothing had changed. Natalie remained the perfect sister. She brought fresh coffee. She organized Ethan's medications. She chatted warmly with doctors and nurses. Everyone seemed to adore her. "Your family has been incredible," one nurse told Claire. "They haven't left his side." Claire smiled politely. "They really haven't." It was true. They were always there. Sometimes almost too eager to be there. Late Wednesday afternoon, Claire returned from the hospital cafeteria carrying 2 cups of coffee. As she approached Ethan's room, she heard voices. She stopped. The door wasn't completely closed. Natalie's voice drifted into the hallway. "Don't push too hard." "I know." Ethan answered. "If we rush her, she'll start asking questions." Claire froze. Her heartbeat became painfully loud. She waited. Footsteps approached from the opposite end of the hallway. A doctor. By the time he reached room 417, the conversation inside had already changed. Natalie was discussing insurance paperwork. Claire entered carrying the coffers. Neither Ethan nor Natalie looked nervous. Not even slightly. Had she imagined it? She couldn't be sure. Still, another note appeared in her phone. Possible conversation interrupted when someone approached room. The following morning, Ryan's elementary school called. Nothing serious. He had forgotten his lunchbox. Claire drove across town before returning to the hospital almost an hour later than usual. As she stepped off the elevator onto the 4th floor, she noticed something unusual. Room 417 was empty. The bed vacant. Her stomach dropped. She hurried toward the nurse's station. "Where's Ethan?" Linda looked up from a chart. "Physical therapy evaluation." Claire frowned. "I thought he wasn't able to stand yet." Linda paused. Only for a fraction of a second. "So did I." The words were barely audible. "What?" Linda quickly looked around. "The therapists are running additional assessments." Before Claire could ask another question, a transporter wheeled a patient past them. The moment was gone. 20 minutes later, Ethan returned. Lying flat. Looking exhausted. Sweat covered his forehead. "Rough session?" Claire asked. He sighed dramatically. "Worst pain of my life." His breathing sounded strained. His face pale. The physical therapist entered moments later to leave paperwork. Claire smiled politely. "How did he do?" The therapist hesitated. "He completed everything we asked." "That's encouraging." "Completed everything." Claire looked at Ethan. He quickly closed his eyes, as if asleep. Another contradiction. Another note. That evening, after Ryan had fallen asleep, Claire sat alone in her SUV inside the parking garage beneath a shopping center 2 blocks from the hospital. Concrete walls surrounded her. No interruptions. No visitors. No excuses. She pulled the USB drive from her purse. Opened her laptop. Inserted it. One folder appeared. Only one. Its name was painfully simple. 4th floor corridor. Inside, a single video file. No explanation. No message. No text. Just a timestamp. Claire clicked play. For several seconds. Nothing happened. A grainy security camera overlooked the hospital hallway outside room 417. The image was silent. Time crawled forward. 11:34 p.m. The hallway was empty. 11:36. Still nothing. Then, the door to Ethan's room slowly opened. Claire leaned closer to the screen. Her pulse pounded inside her ears. Ethan stepped into the hallway. On his own. Without hesitation. Without assistance. Without even looking unsteady. He rolled his shoulders as though loosening stiff muscles after sitting too long. Then stretched both arms over his head. Including the one he claimed he could barely lift. Claire stopped breathing. He wasn't limping. He wasn't dragging his feet. He wasn't acting injured at all. He looked perfectly healthy. He walked casually toward the window overlooking the city lights. Reached into the pocket of his hospital robe. Pulled out a paper takeout bag. Smiled. Inside was a cheeseburger and fries. The very same fast food he constantly criticized in front of Claire, insisting greasy food made him sick. He unwrapped the burger. Took a huge bite. Then laughed quietly to himself. 30 seconds later. Another figure entered the frame. Natalie. She walked straight toward Ethan without surprise. As though they'd arranged the meeting in advance. She sat on the windowsill beside him. This time, the recording captured audio. Not perfectly, but clearly enough. Natalie looked at her brother. Just stay patient. Ethan nodded while chewing. She's starting to believe I'm never going to recover. Natalie smiled. Good. The more hopeless this looks, the easier she'll sign everything. Claire's fingers tightened around the laptop. She couldn't look away. Ethan took another bite. The lake house alone is worth almost $1 million. Natalie nodded. And it's completely in her name. Exactly. He grinned. That's why guilt has to do the work. Claire felt every word like a knife. The lake house. Her parents' lake house in the Adirondacks. The one they had left her before they passed away. It wasn't marital property. Ethan had no legal claim to it. Unless she willingly signed it away. Natalie folded her arms. What happens after the sale? Ethan shrugged casually. I pay off my debts. And after that? He laughed. Simple. I'll recover. Natalie raised an eyebrow. And Claire? Ethan swallowed another bite. We'll divorce. I'll be the tragic husband whose wife abandoned him after his accident. They'll all feel sorry for me. He laughed again. A full, healthy, carefree laugh. Not the laugh of a broken man. The laugh of someone who believed he'd already won. Claire slowly closed the laptop. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply sat motionless inside the dark parking garage. Staring at her own reflection in the windshield. Everything finally made sense. The fake pain. The carefully timed performances. Natalie's schedule. The late-night food delivery. Ryan telling the truth. Even Linda's frightened warning. It had never been about recovery. It had been about manipulation. And now, Claire realized something even more terrifying. This wasn't a desperate lie invented after the accident. It was a carefully rehearsed plan. One that had started long before Ethan ever entered that hospital. Claire remained in the driver's seat for nearly 20 minutes. The laptop sat closed on her lap. The engine was off. The parking garage was silent except for the occasional echo of tires rolling across the concrete above her. She expected to feel rage. Or heartbreak. Instead, she felt clarity. Cold. Sharp. Mathematical. Like finally finding the missing number that made an impossible balance sheet suddenly make sense. Every strange moment from the past 11 days snapped into place. Ryan hadn't imagined anything. The late-night food delivery wasn't a mistake. The pain. The helplessness. The trembling voice. Every second had been carefully performed. For her. Claire looked at the flash drive one more time, before slipping it back into her purse. Then she started the engine. She wasn't going back to the hospital to confront Ethan. Not yet. People who believed they'd already won made mistakes. She intended to let him make one more. The next morning looked exactly like every other morning. Claire arrived carrying coffee. She smiled at the nurses. She kissed Ethan on the forehead. "How are you feeling today?" He sighed dramatically. "My back's getting worse." "I'm sorry." She squeezed his hand. "You'll get through this." For just a split second. She noticed relief cross his face. He still believed she knew nothing. Good. That was exactly how she wanted it. On her lunch break, Claire called an attorney recommended by one of her co-workers. His office overlooked downtown Albany. She didn't tell him everything. Only the facts. "My husband is pretending to be more disabled than he actually is. I have evidence. I believe he's trying to pressure me into selling property that belongs solely to me." The attorney listened without interrupting. Finally he asked. "The property? How did you acquire it?" "My parents left it to me. It was inherited before Ethan and I were married." The attorney immediately replied. "Then he has no ownership interest." Claire closed her eyes. "I thought so. There is something else." She hesitated. "If he's intentionally deceiving you to obtain money or property, that moves beyond a family dispute. Depending on intent and evidence, it could become fraud." Claire looked out the office window. "What should I do?" "I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. If there are plans to sign legal documents, let them continue making those plans. People attempting fraud often reveal far more when they believe success is guaranteed." That evening, Claire received a phone call from Natalie. Her voice sounded unusually warm. "Hey. I've been worried about you. You're carrying everything by yourself." Claire smiled despite knowing Natalie couldn't see it. "I'm managing. I spoke with Mom today." Natalie continued gently. "We've been researching rehabilitation centers. There are amazing spinal clinics. Some in Boston. Some even in Germany. The treatments are expensive." She paused. Claire waited. "But if everyone works together, maybe Ethan still has a chance." There it was. The first step. Not asking for money. Preparing her emotionally. Claire answered softly. "I'd do anything for Ethan." "I know you would." Natalie's voice almost sounded relieved. "We'll talk more in a few days." After hanging up, Claire immediately wrote down every word she could remember. The following afternoon, Dr. Michael Hayes stopped Claire in the hallway. "I've ordered another neurological evaluation." Claire looked surprised. "For Ethan?" He nodded. "It's routine." His expression suggested otherwise. "We'll perform several tests, without telling him beforehand exactly what we are checking." Claire understood. He suspected something too. "When?" "Friday morning." She glanced toward Ethan's room. "Thank you." The doctor lowered his voice. "If your instincts are correct, we'll know." That night, Claire called the number her attorney had given her. She expected voicemail. Instead, a calm male voice answered. New York State Financial Crimes Task Force. She introduced herself. For the next 25 minutes she explained everything. The accident. The inheritance. The video. The conversations. The attorney. The officer asked short, precise questions. "Does your husband know you have the recording?" "No." "Has he asked you to sign anything yet?" "Not yet. But I think it's coming." "Good?" Claire frowned. "Good?" "Yes. If they are planning fraud, they'll eventually ask you to transfer authority or ownership. We'd rather document the attempt than interrupt it too early. So what do I do? The officer answered immediately. Continue acting exactly as you have. Don't accuse anyone. Don't cancel meetings. If paperwork gets scheduled, tell us first. We'll be ready. Claire thanked him, then sat quietly in her kitchen after the call ended. Ryan was asleep upstairs. The house felt impossibly still. For the first time in days, she realized she wasn't fighting alone anymore. Friday morning arrived. The hospital buzzed with its usual controlled chaos. Doctors hurried between rooms. Elevators chimed constantly. Families carried flowers and balloons through the lobby. Inside room 417, everything appeared perfectly normal. Ethan complained about pain. Natalie adjusted his blanket. Evelyn sat silently reading a prayer book. Then Dr. Hayes entered. Good morning. We are doing another neurological assessment today. Ethan forced a weak smile. Whatever helps. The examination lasted nearly 40 minutes. Unlike previous evaluations, this one was different. Unexpected reflex tests, distraction exercises, muscle resistance checks. Questions repeated in different ways. Claire watched quietly from the corner. At one point, Dr. Hayes accidentally dropped a reflex hammer beside the bed. The metallic clang echoed sharply across the room. Without thinking, Ethan's right leg jerked instinctively. Fast. Strong. Completely natural. He realized what he'd done only a second later. His face froze. Dr. Hayes noticed. He didn't react. He simply wrote something on his tablet and continued the examination, as if nothing unusual had happened. But Claire saw it. So did the doctor. And judging by the brief glance they exchanged, neither of them needed any more convincing. The truth was beginning to reveal itself. One mistake at a time. Dr. Hayes finished the examination without revealing a single emotion. He thanked Ethan for his cooperation, made a few final notes on his tablet, and left the room. The door clicked shut. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Ethan let out a long groan and slowly closed his eyes. I don't think I can do another test like that, he whispered dramatically. My back feels like it's on fire. Natalie immediately stepped beside the bed. You pushed yourself too hard. She turned toward Claire. Did you see how much pain he was in? Claire looked at her husband. I saw. She kept her voice calm. Measured. Exactly the way she spoke during difficult budget meetings at work. No anger. No suspicion. Nothing that would make anyone think she already knew the truth. That afternoon, Dr. Hayes asked Claire to meet him privately in his office. He closed the door behind her. I can't officially accuse a patient of faking symptoms without completing every required procedure, he began. Claire nodded. I understand. But? He folded his hands on the desk. Today's examination raised serious concerns. What kind of concerns? There were multiple involuntary responses that don't match the level of paralysis your husband has been reporting. He slid a document across the desk. It isn't a final report. But I wanted you to know we will continue testing. Claire looked at the paper. Medical terminology filled every line. She didn't understand most of it. She didn't need to. The doctor's expression said enough. Thank you, she whispered. As she reached the door, he spoke again. Mrs. Whitmore. She turned. If someone is manipulating you, don't let guilt make your decisions. The weekend arrived. Ethan seemed unusually optimistic. His smile appeared more often. He joked with nurses. Even laughed at television commercials. Whenever Claire entered the room, he quickly returned to looking exhausted. The performance had become almost predictable. Sunday afternoon, Natalie brought coffee for everyone. She waited until Evelyn stepped out to answer a phone call. Only then did she sit beside Claire. "I've been thinking." Claire looked up. "About what?" "Ethan." She sighed dramatically. The insurance company denied another portion of his rehabilitation. Claire remained silent. Natalie continued. "I didn't want to tell you until we knew for sure." Claire wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "How bad is it?" Natalie lowered her voice. "The treatments he really needs. They are going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars." She hesitated. "Maybe more." Claire slowly nodded. "I figured." Natalie leaned closer. "I know this is impossible to ask. But your parents' lake house." There it was. Finally. Claire looked out the hospital window. The autumn sunlight reflected off the Hudson River. "My parents loved that place." "I know." Natalie reached for her hand. "They'd want Ethan to live." Claire looked back at her. "They probably would." Natalie's shoulders relaxed. She thought she was winning. The property could save his life. Claire remained quiet for several seconds. Long enough to make Natalie nervous. Then she asked softly. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Natalie's voice became careful. "Just think about selling it. That's all. No pressure." Claire smiled. "I'll think about it." That evening. Ethan looked at Claire with watery eyes. "I hate putting this on you." She sat beside him. "You never asked for any of this." "No." He swallowed hard. "I wish I could still take care of you." Claire gently squeezed his hand. "You always have." The words almost made her sick. He believed every second of his performance. "I've been thinking." Ethan continued. "If selling the lake house gives me another chance. I don't know how I'd ever repay you." Claire lowered her eyes. "As long as you're alive. That's enough." His face softened with relief. He reached for her hand. "You're saving my life." Claire forced herself to smile. Inside. She was remembering another sentence. "She's soft. She'll sign everything." Monday morning, Claire met with her attorney again. This time she brought the flash drive. He watched the recording twice. Without speaking. When the video ended, he leaned back in his chair. "That recording changes everything." Claire folded her arms. "I thought so. The inherited property is already protected." He pointed toward the paused image of Ethan laughing. "But this shows intent, premeditation, and conspiracy." Claire stared at the frozen frame. Natalie was smiling. Ethan still held the cheeseburger. "So what happens now?" The attorney smiled slightly. "We wait." "For what?" "For them to ask you to sign." Claire frowned. "They already hinted." "They'll do more than hint. They'll prepare paperwork. They'll pressure you emotionally. They'll probably involve a notary." He closed the laptop. "And that's exactly when investigators should step in." Tuesday afternoon. Claire received another call. This time. It was Evelyn. Her mother-in-law sounded strangely nervous. "Claire. Can you come by a little earlier tomorrow?" "Why?" "We are having a family meeting." Claire pretended to hesitate. "About Ethan?" "Yes. There are important decisions." "I'll be there." After hanging up, she immediately called the financial crimes investigator. "They are moving forward." The investigator answered without surprise. "I expected they would. They'll probably ask you to transfer authority over the property." Claire looked toward the hospital from her parked car. "What should I say?" "Tell them you're willing to help. But don't sign anything. We'll handle the rest." Claire ended the call. Then looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. For almost 2 weeks, she had played the role of the worried wife. Now, she was about to play a different role. The woman who had finally agreed. And if everything went according to plan, Ethan and Natalie would walk straight into the trap they had built for themselves. Wednesday morning began almost too peacefully. Claire arrived at Hudson Memorial carrying Ethan's favorite coffee. He smiled the moment she walked into the room. There she is. My hero. Claire handed him the cup. Careful. It's hot. He laughed softly. You always know exactly what I need. She smiled back. Inside, she wondered how many times he'd rehearsed lines like that. Around 10 o'clock. Natalie closed the room's door. Evelyn stood beside the window with her arms folded. For the first time since Ethan's accident, it truly felt like a family meeting. Natalie cleared her throat. We've done a lot of research. Claire nodded. So have I. We found a rehabilitation center outside Boston. Natalie slid a glossy brochure across the bedside table. The specialists there have treated patients with injuries much worse than Ethan's. Ethan stared toward the ceiling. I don't even want to imagine how much it costs. Natalie answered immediately. Almost $400,000 for the first phase. Claire slowly flipped through the brochure. Modern equipment. Smiling doctors. Patients learning to walk again. Everything looked convincing. Almost too convincing. Evelyn finally spoke. There isn't much time. The doctors say the sooner treatment begins, the greater the chance he'll recover. Claire quietly closed the brochure. So? Natalie leaned forward. We've been discussing the lake house. There it was again. This time. No hesitation. No subtle hints. Only the destination they had been slowly leading her toward. Claire looked from Natalie to Evelyn, then finally to Ethan. He looked away first. I've been thinking about it too, Claire said softly. The room instantly grew lighter. She saw relief spread across every face. Even Ethan's breathing changed. You have, he asked. Claire nodded. If selling it gives you another chance, then maybe it's the right thing. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. Or what looked like tears. I don't deserve you. Claire reached for his hand. You don't have to deserve me. You just have to get better. Natalie smiled. A genuine smile. Not because Ethan was supposedly recovering. Because she believed the plan had worked. Less than 5 minutes later, Natalie pulled a folder from her designer handbag. I actually spoke with an attorney yesterday. Claire raised an eyebrow. Already? Natalie laughed nervously. I just wanted to save everyone time. Inside the folder. Prepared documents. Property valuation. Power of attorney paperwork. Estimated closing dates. Everything. Claire slowly turned the pages. She had expected pressure. She hadn't expected everything to already be organized. You've been busy, she said. Natalie shrugged. We are only trying to help. Claire stopped on one page. Power of attorney. Granting Natalie Brooks full authority to negotiate. Sign. Receive payment. And distribute proceeds from the sale. Not Ethan. Natalie. Claire looked up. So? You'd be handling everything. Ethan answered before Natalie could. I can't travel. I can't meet buyers. I can't even sit upright for long. Natalie offered. Claire nodded thoughtfully. Makes sense. Inside. Every alarm bell was ringing. That afternoon, Claire met the financial crimes investigator in a quiet cafe across from the courthouse. He introduced himself simply as Detective Marcus Bennett. Mid-40s. Calm. The type of man who listened more than he spoke. Claire handed him copies of every document Natalie had shown her. He read each page carefully. Then smiled. This is better than I expected. Claire frowned. Better? They've documented intent. He tapped the power of attorney. Look at this. Claire leaned closer. The authority isn't limited to selling the property. She looked again. He was right. The wording also granted authority over receiving funds, managing accounts connected to the transaction, and making financial decisions during Ethan's medical treatment. Far broader than necessary. They got greedy, Marcus said quietly. Claire folded her arms. So what now? We let them schedule the signing. And then? Marcus smiled. We'll already be there. Thursday evening. Natalie called again. Her voice sounded almost cheerful. Good news. Claire answered carefully. What happened? I found a mobile notary. He can come directly to Ethan's hospital room. Claire pretended to sound relieved. That makes things easier. So? Natalie continued. Would Friday morning work? Claire glanced toward the detective sitting across from her. He gave a tiny nod. Friday is perfect. Wonderful. I'll confirm everything. After hanging up, Claire set her phone on the cafe table. Marcus made a few notes. They are committed now. Claire stared out the window. Rain had begun falling over downtown Albany. What if they realize something's wrong? They won't. People this confident rarely believe they are the ones being watched. That night, Claire barely slept. Not because she was afraid. Because she kept replaying one memory. Ryan. Sitting quietly at the kitchen table. Looking down at his macaroni. Mom. I saw Dad walking. She had dismissed him. She had trusted adults. Trusted appearances. Trusted emotions. Instead of trusting the one person in her life who had absolutely no reason to lie. The realization hurt more than Ethan's betrayal. The next morning before school, Ryan hugged her tightly. You look nervous. Claire smiled. I have a big meeting today. He nodded thoughtfully. You're going to win. She blinked. What makes you think that? Ryan grinned. Because you are telling the truth. Claire wrapped her arms around him, holding him a little longer than usual. Then she whispered. I promise you something. What? From now on, when you tell me you saw something, I'll listen. Ryan smiled. I know. Claire watched him climb onto the school bus. Then she drove toward Hudson Memorial Hospital. Toward the meeting everyone believed would end with her signature. Only 4 people knew the truth. Claire, her attorney, Detective Marcus Bennett, and somewhere inside the hospital, head nurse Linda Carter. By lunchtime, someone's life was about to change forever. But it wouldn't be Claire's. Friday arrived with grey skies hanging low over Albany. A steady rain tapped against the hospital windows. The kind of weather that made the entire city seem quieter than usual. Claire parked in the visitor garage at 8:15 a.m. She took one long breath before stepping out of the car. Inside her purse were only 3 things that mattered. The flash drive, the attorney's business card, and her phone. Everything else was already in motion. Room 417 looked almost cheerful. Fresh flowers sat on the windowsill. Someone had brought pastries. Even Ethan seemed unusually energetic. Though, of course, only from the neck up. Natalie was checking her watch every few minutes. Evelyn paced slowly near the window. You're here, Natalie said with visible relief. I was starting to worry. Claire smiled apologetically. Traffic. She placed a thin folder on the chair beside the bed. Ethan reached for her hand. I know how hard this is. Claire gently squeezed his fingers. We are doing what's best. His eyes became glossy. I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you. Claire forced herself to smile. You should focus on getting better. At exactly 8:47. There was a knock. Natalie immediately straightened her jacket. That must be the notary. Come in. The door opened. A middle-aged man carrying a leather briefcase stepped inside. Good morning. I'm Daniel Ross, the mobile notary. He shook everyone's hand. Then carefully arranged several documents on the small table beside Ethan's bed. Claire quietly watched. Every signature line had already been marked with bright yellow tabs. Everything had been prepared in advance. Daniel adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Whitmore. I'll first verify your identification. Before he could finish, another knock interrupted him. 3 sharp taps. Not hurried. Not hesitant. The room fell silent. Natalie frowned. We are busy. The door opened anyway. 2 men and 1 woman entered. Business suits. Calm expressions. Official badges. The woman spoke first. Good morning. My name is Special Investigator Karen Mitchell. She held up her credentials. New York State Financial Crimes Task Force. Nobody moved. Karen continued. We apologize for the interruption. But this signing cannot proceed. Natalie's face lost all color. What are you talking about? The second investigator stepped forward. We are conducting an active fraud investigation. The words landed like a thunderclap. Evelyn gripped the back of a chair. What fraud? Ethan's breathing suddenly became faster. Claire remained perfectly still. The notary slowly closed his briefcase. I think I'll wait. Karen turned toward him. Thank you, Mr. Ross. We may need your statement later. He nodded silently. Natalie recovered first. This is ridiculous. My brother was almost killed. He's paralyzed. His wife volunteered to help. Karen looked directly at Claire. Mrs. Whitmore. Did anyone force you to schedule today's meeting? Claire answered calmly. No. Did anyone pressure you emotionally to sell inherited property? Yes. Natalie immediately interrupted. That's a lie. Claire didn't even look at her. I have evidence. Karen nodded. I know. She turned toward Ethan. Mr. Whitmore. We'd like to ask you several questions. Ethan swallowed. I don't know what this is about. Karen smiled politely. I believe you do. One of the investigators removed a tablet from his briefcase. He connected a small USB drive. Claire instantly recognized it. Linda's flash drive. The screen lit up. Hospital security footage. 4th floor hallway. 11:36 p.m. Nobody spoke. The video played. The room watched in complete silence. Ethan stepped into the hallway. Walking normally. Stretching both arms. Opening his takeout bag. Laughing. Natalie entered seconds later. The audio began. Just stay patient. She's starting to believe I'm never going to recover. Ethan's voice filled the room. The more hopeless this looks, the easier she'll sign everything. Nobody breathed. The recording continued. The lake house alone is worth almost $1 million. After I pay off my debts, I'll recover. Then we'll divorce. Everyone will feel sorry for me. The video ended. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. Almost impossible to breathe through. Ethan looked at the investigators. Then at Claire. Then back to the blank screen. His face had gone completely pale. Finally he spoke. It's edited. Karen didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward the doorway. Ms. Carter. Would you please come in? Head nurse Linda Carter stepped quietly into the room. She looked directly at Ethan. I was responsible for reporting irregular activity after visiting hours. She folded her hands. The hospital's security system records continuously. The footage has already been verified by our IT department. There are no edits. No manipulation. No missing sections. Nothing. Natalie slowly backed away from the bed. This can't be happening. Karen calmly replied. It already has. Before anyone could say another word, Dr. Michael Hayes entered carrying a sealed envelope. I believe these belong in your investigation. Karen accepted it. What is it? The finalized neurological assessment. She opened the envelope. Read silently. Then looked directly at Ethan. The examination found no objective medical evidence supporting the level of disability you repeatedly claimed. Dr. Hayes spoke quietly. Mr. Whitmore demonstrated normal muscle activation, normal protective reflexes, and voluntary movements inconsistent with paralysis. Every word felt like another brick collapsing onto Ethan's carefully constructed lie. His performance, built over weeks, was falling apart in less than 5 minutes. And the worst part for him, the investigators were only getting started. For several long seconds, no one moved. The room felt frozen in time. Only the rhythmic beeping of Ethan's heart monitor reminded everyone that the world outside hadn't stopped. Ethan stared at the tablet. His own laughter still echoed in his mind. He opened his mouth, closed it again. There was no explanation that could erase what everyone had just seen. Natalie broke first. This doesn't prove anything. Her voice shook. It proves he walked. It doesn't prove fraud. Special Investigator Karen Mitchell calmly folded her hands. Actually, it helps establish intent. She turned toward the second investigator. Mr. Alvarez. The investigator stepped forward carrying a thin folder. We've spent the last 48 hours reviewing financial records obtained through court authorization. He opened the folder. Mr. Whitmore, would you like to explain why you've accumulated over $480,000 in unsecured personal debt during the last 3 years? Ethan's face went blank. No answer. Mr. Alvarez continued. Multiple high-interest loans. Private lenders. 3 default judgments. 2 pending collection actions. And 1 lawsuit scheduled for next month. Claire slowly closed her eyes. So it was true. The lake house had never been about saving Ethan's life. It had been about saving him from financial ruin. Karen looked toward Claire. Mrs. Whitmore, were you aware of any of these debts? Claire shook her head. No. Ethan finally spoke. I was going to tell her. Karen didn't even look at him. When? No answer. Before. Or after she signed away authority over her inherited property. Silence. The investigator placed another document onto the bedside table. We also recovered deleted text messages. Natalie suddenly looked terrified. Deleted? Karen nodded. Nothing truly disappears. She began reading. Keep acting weak. She's starting to crack. Friday has to happen before the creditors move. Claire looked at Ethan. He couldn't meet her eyes. Karen continued. Once the sale closes, I'll finally breathe again. After that, I'm filing for divorce. The room became impossibly quiet. Every sentence matched the recording. Every message confirmed the plan. Every lie now had written proof. Evelyn slowly sat down. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. She looked at her son. You? Her voice barely came out. You promised me. Ethan looked desperate. Mom. I can explain. No. She shook her head. You said you only needed help. You told me Claire would understand. You never told me. She couldn't finish the sentence. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. For the first time since this nightmare began, Claire almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Karen looked toward Evelyn. Mrs. Whitmore. Did you know your son intended to deceive his wife into transferring property? Evelyn covered her face. I knew he was drowning in debt. I knew people were calling. I knew he was terrified. She lowered her hands. But I never knew. He planned all of this. Natalie immediately interrupted. Don't listen to her. She's confused. Karen calmly replied. I am simply collecting statements. Natalie looked ready to say something else. Instead, she stayed silent. Dr. Hayes cleared his throat. I'd like to add something. Everyone looked toward him. When Mr. Whitmore first arrived after the accident, his injuries were real. Claire frowned. The doctor nodded. He absolutely suffered a spinal fracture. But based on healing progress, he recovered much faster than he admitted. Karen asked. So medically, he exaggerated his condition. Dr. Hayes answered without hesitation. Yes. He intentionally continued presenting symptoms that objective testing could no longer support. Those words removed the final piece of doubt. Even the accident, the one event that had started everything, had become nothing more than a tool. Ethan suddenly threw the blanket aside. Without thinking, he stood, completely upright. The room fell silent again. He realized what he'd done only after both feet touched the floor. Too late. Far too late. Nobody gasped. Nobody even looked surprised. The investigators simply watched. Karen quietly said, "Thank you." Ethan looked confused. For what? She smiled. For removing any remaining uncertainty. He slowly looked down. At his own legs. Standing. Strong. Perfectly steady. Then he looked at Claire. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't even angry. She simply looked. Finished. The illusion had finally collapsed. Not because someone exposed it. Because Ethan himself had forgotten which version of reality he was pretending to live in. Claire picked up her purse. Then the folder containing the unsigned documents. She turned toward Karen. Will you still need these? Karen accepted the papers carefully. Yes. They are evidence now. Claire nodded once. She turned toward Ethan. He whispered her name. Claire. She stopped. But she didn't face him. I never stopped loving the man I thought you were. Her voice remained calm. I just realized. He never existed. Without waiting for an answer, she walked toward the door. Behind her, she heard Ethan calling again. Louder this time. Claire, please. She kept walking. The hallway outside felt strangely quiet. As if the entire hospital had taken a deep breath. Then, she felt someone gently touch her shoulder. It was Linda Carter, the nurse who had handed her the flash drive. Linda smiled for the first time. A small, tired, but genuine smile. I hoped you'd believe what you saw. Claire looked at her. Why did you help me? Linda glanced back toward room 417. I've been a nurse for 23 years. I know the difference between pain and performance. Claire's eyes filled with tears. This time, she didn't try to hold them back. Because for the first time in weeks, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. The truth was finally out. But one final conversation still remained.